So, you've been let down by Xbox again. Whether as a hardworking developer who has to wonder if you'll still be employed by next week, or a customer who's been repeatedly handed broken promises and endless cancellations, Phil Spencer has talked his big talk about how Game Pass will bring your childhood dog back to life, before spitting in your face and giving you another reason to just give in and buy that damn Switch 2 already. You've come to the realization that Xbox just doesn't care about making games anymore. This video was entirely unplanned, up until about 5 days ago, when Xbox announced that they were gutting their employees as part of another mass Microsoft workforce layoff. Head of Xbox Phil Spencer couldn't satiate his bloodlust after 3 previous rounds of mass layoffs in the past 18 months, so we're once again 3 steps backwards with what feels like constant disappointment from the team behind Halo, Gears of War, Fable, Perfect Dark. Well, not Perfect Dark, because it was cancelled alongside the closure of The Initiative, a studio that was founded in 2018, with the Perfect Dark reboot being the first and primary title that The Initiative was working on.
One word to describe The Initiative. Right now, it's ambition.
7 years of struggle and development issues, now flushed down the drain. The AAA games industry is so utterly... It's not just that a studio can be closed down after releasing a successful title, like what happened with Hi-Fi Rush. No, we've now reached the point where a studio can be shut down without ever releasing a single game. And mismanagement and development trouble aside, I can't see how shutting down the studio entirely is any kind of improvement over hiring new management and working to correct the issues. Maybe the well had already been long poisoned. But even if we were to believe that, it doesn't explain the case of Everwild, Rare's next major project after the redemption story that was Sea of Thieves, a surprise Xbox victory that they are very much in need of right now. But instead, Everwild, after being in development since 2014 and having gone through some major reboot, is now dead, alongside with any kind of optimism for Rare, since the death of Everwild also comes with the departure of Greg Mayles, the director of Everwild, Sea of Thieves, and Banjo-Kazooie, as well as working on the Donkey Kong Country series, making him responsible for 2 of the most influential platformers of all time. Mayles has a legendary resume, and he's been developing video games for as long as Phil Spencer has been working at Microsoft. To see him leave Rare is a massive blow, and I can only hope that he continues to work for some kind of independent studio, because he's contributed more to this industry than every Xbox executive combined. I have to preface the rest of this video with a very big disclaimer. I don't have any hatred towards Xbox or any kind of devotion to any single developer or publisher. I want the talented artists and teams at Xbox to succeed, and I'd love to see long-running franchises make a grand comeback. I can't help but envision a future Halo title that dominates the modern online multiplayer space with a style that celebrates and iterates on the classic era of the original Bungie trilogy. But any kind of dream like that is fading, thanks to the one and only... If I come across as too harsh on Phil Spencer, regardless of how much he is to blame for these decisions and how many other executives are involved in these layoffs, at the end of the day, he is the head of Xbox. All of Xbox's success and failures start and end with him, and the legacy he's leaving behind for Xbox is going to be remembered as one of extreme failure if this is the precedent he sets for how veterans of the industry such as Mayles are treated. If you're truly a company that cares about making high-quality games, then you don't just simply cancel his project. He's had a hand in some of the greatest games ever made. Support his work and his vision. Invest in your talent, or you'll quickly find yourself with no one left to make your games. This failure is even more outrageous when you consider how profitable Microsoft is as a corporation, and how often Xbox touts their own success. Just 4 months ago, they talked about the great player count for Black Ops 6 and Indiana Jones thanks to Game Pass, which set a new quarterly record for revenue, with Game Pass PC seeing growth in player count by over 30%. These are their own words. Console sales for the Xbox Series have been slowing down, but Game Pass is a success. So let's celebrate by firing even more developers that haven't even worked at Xbox long enough to see a game ship to completion. But this is all actually a strategic sign of effective success and essential growth, and other dumb bullshit buzzwords to distract you from the fact that this is just because Microsoft isn't growing enough. It's not about making a giant profit every year. If they're not making more money than the previous year, for every year until the end of time, then you will lose your job. It's bad enough to shut down Mayles' work, but it's worse to release a high-quality success like Hi-Fi Rush, tout the success of it, claim how excited and satisfied you are with Hi-Fi Rush's performance, only to then backstab the studio and shut them down.
You're not in a position, and I see it out there, I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift?
Yes, Phil. Yes, you can. Nintendo, who's had major issues regarding backwards system implementations and misguided business practices, like pricing Mario Kart World at $80, is currently in the midst of the fastest selling console of all time with the Switch 2. Do you want to know why, Phil? It's because Nintendo's primary strategy of the last 7 years is to release high-quality titles in many of their franchises, from their most popular Marios and Zeldas to the lesser but still beloved properties like Pikmin, Advance Wars, and Famicom Detective Club, which hadn't received a new entry since 1997, until last year with the release of Emio the Smiling Man. Are all of these titles absolute hits? No. There are lesser or disappointing entries, but the fact that Nintendo has such a wide variety of franchises they want to invest in, with the Switch leading to the revival of many of their dormant properties, in the modern AAA industry, what they're doing compared to many of their contemporaries is nothing short of a game development miracle. The top 20 best-selling games for the Switch are all first-party exclusives and each exceed 10 million copies sold, with the top 3 titles accounting for over 100 million copies alone. What a monumental level of success that is earned because of Nintendo's commitment to their developers and their long-standing franchises for the better part of 40 years now. Of all the major publishers and developers in this industry, Nintendo has one of the best track records for how they've treated many of their long-running franchises. They've released an entire quadrilogy of well-received open-world JRPGs for the Switch with the Xenoblade franchise, in the time it's taken the initiative to develop and then cancel one single game. Metroid is no stranger to troubled development and releases, and for a while there, from 2010 to 2017, any Metroid fan can tell you that it was looking pretty grim, until Metroid Dread, which had gone into a coma for nearly 15 years, having initially been worked on for the Nintendo DS, was given a new chance at life and released for the Switch in 2021. And it was excellent. Metroid Prime 4 had completely restarted development 2 years after its announcement, not unlike Everwild and Perfect Dark. And now, Prime 4 is set to release later this year, and it's looking great. Look at what happens when a legacy studio invests in their developers versus a giant tech business that prioritizes shareholder interests more than anything. Despite the high price of the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World, Nintendo is selling out of their products because they've earned that trust from their fanbase by releasing great game after great game every single year since 2017. Whether or not you think the company deserves it, you can't deny that what they're doing is working for many people. So Phil, the answer really is that simple. If you make great games and make them consistently, then you will succeed. Nintendo is just one example of how much better Xbox could and should be doing. But that won't happen, because Xbox doesn't care about making games anymore. And they don't really care about being at the forefront of console development either. All of their messaging and actions in the past 5 years point to them simply being another publisher of games. The days are gone of Xbox at their max competitiveness with titles like Halo, Fable, Gears of War. They just want to make money off of games. That's why they've spent a fortune buying talented game studios. They want those titles on Game Pass so they can just make money. They don't need to make the games. What's the point of investing in development teams and years worth of hard work when you can just buy the competition and then sell their products for a low price of $9.99 a month? And for what it's worth, ask anyone who's tried Game Pass, and most of them will tell you that it's one of the best ideas that Xbox has had in a while. Phil Spencer gets credit where it's due for being at the forefront for the push for Game Pass, an affordable subscription service for people who want to try out a lot of games without a full price commitment. It is a great idea, and it makes it easy for anyone to get into gaming. And to that, I personally hope that Game Pass thrives in that manner. But even Game Pass is dicey, given several developers being outspoken about it as a business model and how it affects publishers and devs who release their titles through it. The founder of Arcane Studios and publishing director at Larian Studios have both made separate comments citing how unsustainable Game Pass is. So just like anything with Xbox right now, it's best to keep a very cautious eye on it in the future. Who knows how that's going to change? But regarding the games that are developed and published in-house now, how could anyone be excited for whatever comes next from Halo Studios when they've just suffered layoffs before unveiling their next major title? Or Elder Scrolls 6, still being years away and possibly set to release as a disappointment for fans, just like the case with Starfield. You might as well start purchasing the caskets for Fable and State of Decay 3, because without a concrete release date, they're just as likely to be cancelled as they are to release. And the same goes for any other future Xbox title that doesn't have a specific date locked in. If it's more than 6 months out from release, in the eyes of Xbox, it might as well not even exist. And none of this even goes into some recent issues with quality control. Having some lesser titles and duds is expected. Nintendo and Sony, for example, are no stranger to this, with Sony in particular stumbling with limited exclusives and a push for live service that has produced almost nothing but cancellations and disappointments as well, like Concord. But having a disastrous, horrible release like Redfall is an anomaly. It's baffling that it was ever allowed to even make it to release. Yet a reported project like ZeniMax's MMO, which was in development, was apparently loved so much by Phil Spencer that he couldn't stop playing it. But it gets canceled too! Jesus Christ, even games that are good get canceled! Did you know that Lies of P, developed and published by Newiz and Round 8 Studio, awarded the developers with 2 weeks vacation, a bonus, and Switch 2s for everyone to celebrate the title for selling 3 million copies worldwide? Monolith Soft, developers of Xenoblade Chronicles, increased the salaries across the company 2 years ago to help workers combat the rising costs of inflation. From Software, developers of Elden Ring and every Souls game, announced a pay increase for all employees, alongside famed director Hidetaka Miyazaki making comments last year about how he would not allow mass layoffs to happen so long as he's in a leadership position. I mention these to highlight that the fair treatment of developers in the games industry isn't just some fairy tale. It's possible. It needs to be the standard practice. I really have nowhere productive to take this conversation. The more it develops, the worse it gets. There's reports that these cuts by Microsoft are all towards developing and investing in AI infrastructure and products, which is just the icing to this dumpster cake. Despite what Xbox might hope for, this stain won't go away overnight. In fact, it may take up to 10 years for Xbox to have any kind of major redemption. The cancellation of Scalebound is still talked about to this day, and 10 years from now, it'll share its grave with Perfect Dark, Everwild, ZeniMax's RPG, and the layoffs affecting studios like Turn 10, Romero Games, and Halo Studios, who are somehow expected to deliver the next exciting entry in Xbox's biggest franchise after this blow to their workforce and momentum, which was the last thing they needed after Halo Infinite, which already left some fans with a bitter aftertaste. All that's really left to say is, I sincerely hope that developers can bounce back from these layoffs and find homes in a studio that will value them the way that Xbox never did. And to all the executives at Xbox that keep sacrificing goodwill and talent for the sake of appeasing their shareholders, it's not too late. Invest in your teams, focus your efforts, and take some goddamn responsibility for once, instead of shifting the blame. I'm not a billionaire CEO executive. I don't run a major gaming company, and I never will. But what I can claim is that I'm not a moron driven by greed. If you make good games, then people will play them. It doesn't matter what kind of lie Phil Spencer or Sarah Bond or Matt Booty or any other executive at Xbox try to spin. You don't have to win the console war. You don't even have to participate in the console war. But you do have to give people a reason to buy your console and your games. You have to prove to your customers and your employees that they didn't just waste years of their lives on broken promises and failed management. If you truly cared, you'd invest in your teams instead of just buying every single studio in the industry to then just close them down and fire their employees. But instead, what you have left is a gaming company that doesn't care about making games anymore.
Isolate that signal. Master Chief, you mind telling me what you're doing on that ship?
Sir, fishing.